What is good, YouTube? It's Aaron back here with the channel, and today we have a new Forbidden and Limited list that's just came out. It's going to be my first impressions and kind of how I think the meta is going to change moving forward. Yeah, I've like kind of skimmed it, but I haven't actually like done like any like actual like deep thought processes. It's going to be kind of a live react. I've seen an idea of the card, but like I haven't put too much time to like. So let's get right into it. So goes into place September 15th, but I think is Monday or Tuesday of next week. So gonna be live in the immediate. Forbidden, first of all, Moon of the Closed Heaven. So that, along with King of the Fair Realms, which we see right afterwards, it is kind of like reducing the ability of a lot of engines to be splashable, which I think is a good direction for the game. Like it's cool that like everything bridges, like being able to go from Mitsurugi into Raizio, and then obviously like you can use Exton Knight to get into Fiends as well. Like all of that, like when you play those games, it feels really good. But obviously, like the power of that gets really high. If you don't open a card like Joel Lockbird or like Wallows, those end boards can just be like too oppressive for like any realistic deck to go second with. Especially if you're ending on like Desiree plus everything. So yeah, I think these were needed hits for sure. We'll see what everything else, the additional changes that come. Moon kind of restricting the splashability of Fiendsmith I think is good because if you lower the power level of other things, Fiendsmith just becomes like the most splashable engine. And as we've seen, like Caesar just like a very oppressive card whenever you get to end on it in addition to whatever else that your deck does, and it only requires 2 monsters to get that way. So kind of predicted this in the beginning. Like usually when they print like a really good card in a low rarity, it's kind of just like how they do these types of hits. So good to see that hit. Obviously, Exile Knight didn't need to get hit. Like it's only Ice Riser that kind of bridges it in that way off the Riser engine. What I've heard, there's more additional Riser hits. So that engine just, I mean, Riser plus Fiendsmith has always been solid, but less Riser makes it less. Then initially we have Splash Mage. Hopefully there's more hits to Malice. This is something that Josh Schmidt pulled out a while ago. I just want that deck to be as bad as possible if they didn't like straight out ban Whitebinder, which is kind of what I was hoping for. But yeah, just like making it so hand traps are more impactful against your deck. So like if you Ghost Ogre or Haggard Lizard Rose, now you can't just like throw 2 buys into Splash Mage to like get back into it. So it, like removing the amount of extenders that your deck has in the extra deck, I think is just like a good thing. Kind of the way that Moon and Fairlamps are now getting hit. So similar premise in that regard. I'm just like reducing the strength of Cyber Stacks I think is important. And then Paradise Smasher, which is the card we've all been complaining about for a while. Good hit, no notes. Reduces the ability for Vanquish Soul to just like play through chummies by just like making Paradise. But yeah, like Memento gets hit a little bit, but like this card just kind of makes hand traps more impactful because you can't just like kind of throw your buys into a Paradise Smasher and hope it works out. So good hit. And then limited, lots of limits here. Extraisial, Dormouse, and then Rosin. First we'll go with Extraisial. This is the card that I've kind of been preaching about, just like being the most broken card in the deck. Um, I unfortunately kind of expected this compared to something like Duo Driver Detonator. Like Extraisial is such a strong card. It's obviously still very searchable through cards like Seventh Tachyon. You've got Small World. Obviously Bonfire. So it's at like effectively 8 copies if you still want to play it. So it's still like an okay engine, but like now it's at 1. Fairlamp is gone. Like Mitsu Rise is probably not too live. Then we'll see if Fiendsmith Rise is still playable with the current changes. Dormouse to 1. This is what the OCG has currently. Yeah, I mean, hopefully Malice is still dead. I'm not convinced that Malice is like unplayable. This is pretty similar to the Worlds format, obviously minus Splash Mage now. So we'll see how this changes things. But I think if you supplement it with cards like Sky Striker, this deck is still pretty playable, which I'm not like the biggest fan about. But if the hand traps actually do become impactful into it, I'm still okay with it. The deck is like kind of cool in terms of the gameplay, but like it's really hard to interact with, which makes it like really not fun to play. Yeah, and then Rosin to 1, which I think is crazy. The deck's been out for a very long time, so I kind of understand it. But at the same time, like the Vanquishful deck already had consistency problems, and now you're just like killing their best starter. And also like a fire, which is what the deck kind of already struggled to have a high count of. So like if you play Vanquishful moving forward, you probably have to play Rescue Ace, Impulse, and Fire Attacker just to maximize the amount of fires that you have in your deck. Yeah, that's a pretty major hit. I'm not sure how the deck is gonna play moving forward. Um, yeah, I'm not like that's a because also it means like your Holy Suit is live on turn 0 less. Like I don't think the deck's dead, but that is a massive consistency hit to a deck that already struggled with that. We'll see if the deck plays like more in a Roy now to bridge into Saryuja and just like try and get into the engine that way. But yeah, that's a pretty nuts hit. Fiendsmith's Lacrima 2/1, which is the fusion monster, if I remember correctly. So level 6 summon from grave. I think Master Duel has this, and it like we don't have Appaloosa, so like this is just like more ways to get into Caesar. But we have like Necroquip, we have Aerial Eater, we have Duke of Demise. We have a lot of different like good fusions to add or that's to play already. So I don't think this is like a major problem considering Appaloosa's banned, and like the extra deck isn't as oppressive in terms of like what it can end on now. Like no Appaloosa, there's no just like other generic negates currently in the extra deck, so I think that's fine. Maybe like makes a bow a little more consistently, so we'll see if that becomes a problem. But currently nothing crazy off of that that I can think of, especially now that time win cons are no longer an issue. Link your Buddha one. I don't think this is a major problem. It was like honestly not the biggest deal in Snake Eye, but like it was still pretty annoying. Like when you had Link Bow defending your end board. So yeah, now that there's like no Appaloosa, it's just like kind of a generic Link one. I don't think there's a big problem with this off the top of my head, so it's fine. Summon Sorceress, I assume this is with the new errata, which I think locks you into something. I don't remember the exact text. But I haven't seen it in the OCG at all, and I'm pretty sure they've had it legal also with the errata, so seems fine to bring back. Herald the Arclight to 1. This is the way that I would have chosen to hit Yummy, was to ban this card. To 1, I don't think changes too much. Like obviously you can double Herald. So I guess it's probably like not the worst hit, but it being the one doesn't really change anything. Like and maybe it impacts. Like I've seen Yummy Mitsurugi running around, where you can like link Herald off into Gravity Controller, so like you still have a Link one, and obviously like add Habakiri. So maybe hurts that version a little bit because that way you have to pick either Herald or Mitsurugi. So we'll see how that plays out. Because currently there's no Mitsurugi list from what I'm scanning, which I think is just like a very strong engine. Has a pretty good Yummy matchup, so we'll see how that plays out. Herald, it's just like a really good extra card. Like I don't think it like needs to be banned, but at 1, I think it's like kind of like SP at 1. Like, does it really change anything? Like, I don't. So maybe like in some game states, but overall, it seems like a pretty low impact adjustment. Dried into 1, we have Trizial Detonator, so this card can better. Probably will be the one that like actually like creates problems if it comes back. Christian Inclusion to 1, kind of a nuts. They're just like hitting the consistency of a lot of decks. Because we can look down at the rest of the spells. We've got Obedience School, then also Stake Your Soul, which is another hit to Ryziel. Obedience School, just like I think that's a good hit as well. Herald and Obedience School are probably the hits to Yummy that I would be that I'm the most appreciated about. I'm not sure if Herald the 1 actually changes things. But School to 1 definitely like lowers the potency of it. Like you can't like Ash Schooled and then have Schooled again. So I think this is a solid adjustment. The card's very strong. Going second, it's like really difficult to like do anything to the deck if they just go like Obedience Schooled, make a Snatchy. Now like you kind of just like dodge every effect that they do for this turn. But back to Inclusion, the deck I think was pretty solid in terms of getting access to Jokul plus Sulfador. So now Inclusion being at 1, that reduces that potency of that. It also hurts your grind game because you don't really want to add back Inclusion. You want to add back the trap card cluster off of the Synchro. I'm not the most well versed in Crystron Canine. I played it a little bit, so I'm gonna assume that this hurts it a fair bit. Does it make it dead? Probably not. If I had to guess with Noroi, it's like especially with these Ryzo hits, it is like the better Canine plus X deck. So yeah, I think it's definitely a hit. Like I said, hurts the grind, but the grind already wasn't that great. It was kind of just like a shit out your board deck and hope you win. So I think it like hurts a little bit of the going first consistency, which is a problem, but like you can kind of supplement it with Noroi. We'll see how it actually changes things, but I'm not sure if it like kills the deck. Like I think this is definitely a less hit than Vanquish Soul. Obviously, it's like one less. Like they hit 2 hits compared to 1. But I think it's like not the biggest deal. I will very much be open to being wrong with that as I see games. But currently my thought. Take your Soul 1. So now the Ryzo deck has even less extenders. Like if the deck gets like interacted with on Rosin, it's harder to like get to Mad Love. Again, like less fires. Like I don't think Vanquish Soul is dead, but I think it's really, really difficult to think this is gonna be like a tier 1 deck now. Like the deck was already considered kind of high roll. Like when I had my discussion with Shane, it was like, yeah, like you're just kind of like accepting that there's gonna be a lot of variance in your matches. And now that there's just like 4 less good starters in your deck, makes it even harder. Like going second, you can't go stake for like Caesar, or whatever. So Vanquishal is like I think tier 2 at best now. And now, like the Yummy matchup was already one of the harder matchups for the deck, and now it gets more support with Doom of Dimensions later in the format or later in the month. And the hits to Yummy were nowhere near as impactful as these hits to Ryziel. You can kind of replace it with just like more names. Like obviously they're getting Marshmallow. Um, so this is like a really big adjustment to the current meta. And Doom of Dimensions doesn't change too much. It kind of adds like DDD a little bit, but it's primarily just like support for current engines. So I'm really curious to see how this all shapes out. But yeah, Vanquishal I think is like a tier 2 deck at best. All of these adjustments, like you lose a lot of really good starters and extenders in the form. And then Judgmental one, sure. I don't think this card was too potent. It was like a relatively common side deck card, but I didn't really think like it was a card that I was super concerned with on average. Um, sure, like I think I'd prefer to like ban Floodgates. Like I'd rather have Goes in Rivalry, Peekaboo banned compared to Solemn Judgment to one. But I think it's kind of like nothing hit. Because like you can just like still play Warning and Strike, and if you're playing a deck like Mitsurugi, you can still search Great Purification. If you're playing a deck like Yummy, you can still end on Herald. So the combinations of like double Omni Negates is going to be lower, but it's not a card that I'm like super concerned with. There's also cards like Dragon's Mind where if you're playing like let's say Ryzo still, like you can just like set that when you control Detonator and like still have an Omni Negate. So not something that I think is going to be too impactful over the course of time. So we shall see if that matters actually. I doubt it. Simulated Branded Fusion. This deck is fine, I guess. Probably would prefer it at 1, but I don't think this being at 2 changes like the relevancy of the deck. Yeah. And then third, Unlimiteds, we have Glow Up Bulb, no Algae Firebracks. I think this card's already at 1, so like doesn't change anything. Masterpiece to Draco Slaying King. Until Diagram comes back, I don't see Draco Slayers or like two whatever Draco King cards becoming relevant. Diagram's just like broken card on that deck. Masterpiece is already at 1 or 2, and Morphing Jar just service, I suppose. This Phantom Skyblaster was played last in Thunder Dragon format, if I remember correctly. You like use it to like make Saryuja. Um, maybe a card that could be kind of oppressive, but like there's enough hand traps in the format that I'm not super concerned with that card. It definitely is more viable at 3 than at 1, but I think there's less like generic, just like throw good bodies in the deck, type of decks. Like there's not like Danger plus Thunder decks. Like it's pretty much like whatever, and then like you splash in an engine like a Fiendsmith. So like Fiendsmith plus Phantom Skyblaster, I don't think actually like ends on anything meaningful. Maybe if there's like a Fiend deck, like I'm a big fan of the Unchained cards, so potentially something like Unchained with either muskets or like the new TCG exclusive cards. I don't know if Skyblaster makes its way into there, but like you now have the option to because it's at 3. And then like obviously that would be the deck that takes advantage of Fiendsmith most because Moon's now not available. So maybe we'll look at something like that, but I don't think Skyblaster, especially now that Moon is not a playable card, that really like affects anything. Ash and Poplar to 3. Original Sinful Spoil was like the backbone of that deck in terms of its splashability. Those cards being at 3, I don't think does anything. As we've seen in Master, like we've seen like some Millennium decks with it, but I don't think it's like anything super impactful. Especially now that Moon's gone, like the splashability of all of it doesn't really. Oh, Diagram to 3, cool. So one of my favorite decks of all time is Draco King Metalfoe, or like whatever True Draco Metalfoe. So I may play that for fun. Diagram plus Dinosaurs was something that was played at one point. So like this being at 3 does open some possibilities of like some really silly things that you can do. But I don't know what it looks like in a format, like in a current game where Droll is like a really prominent card. We obviously have the Chummies, so Diagram will not be like it will make the pure deck better, whatever. Unlike the pure Draco King better. But like the problems that card arose were when it was like combined with like combo decks, like I said, Dinosaur. It wasn't like oppressive in the Metapose deck because the Masterpiece was like the backbone of it. But like Diagram just like a pretty solid card and searches some pretty degenerate stuff. I don't think the Fire True King is. I don't remember. But that card was pretty oppressive. Earth one, or sorry, the Earth one, Little Savage, like banished from the extra deck. So we shall see if this ends up being relevant. My initial guess is just going to be no, but it wouldn't surprise me if at least at regionals, if like the diagram plus dinosaur, like the Jurak cards ended up like actually. That is an interesting. I think of everything that I've seen so far, that's the one that is most likely to like be in terms of like unlimits, and over the past few lists as well. Like generally the unlimits don't change anything, but if I remember correctly, the diagram was at 1, so now it's at 3, so it's like a pretty big adjustment in terms of how many cards are available for it. 2 to 4 is doubling it, and then Lightning Storm to 3. Cool, should have been this way for a while. It going into never did. And then Zodiac Barrage to 3. Trident's now available, so like you kind of can play a splashable like Barrage plus a name into Trident to up your end board. Obviously get you a level 4. But is Rat still at 1, which I'm pretty sure it is, then it doesn't do it. So yeah, overall, not a bad list. It will shake things up a fair bit. We saw no Mitsurugi hits, which was like the one thing that I was kind of expecting, and I'm honestly very happy that it's not. I like the Mitsurugi archetype. I think it's very neat, but obviously the problems with it came from Feral Imps, Extraisial. Busu I think is like an oppressive card, but now the format's a little more probably condensed since there's a lot like less just like broken decks. Like you can't play Mitsurugi. Mouse will probably be less prominent. We'll see how the deck fares if people stop playing Lancia. But like if you're able to focus down on a card like Futsu, be like, okay, this is a card that I'm concerned with, then you can probably like there's cards like Super Poly. I don't know what else off the top of my head, but like you can just like Regeki their board. You can evenly match like just doing things that force it out or like burn their interactions. I think is relevant to the deck. Like if you're clearing their entire board, like what the VS trap was already like a pretty oppressive interaction against Mitsuru because they kind of struggled to like actually interact with cards on board because Magatama only pops face ups. So I'm very interested to see how this plays out. I'll do a tier list at some point with some more fleshed out thoughts, but I like the list. Nothing that I have any problems with, honestly. I think the VS hits are a little heavy. I'm not sure how I would have done it, but in fairness to Konami, if they wanted to hit these decks, which they hit all of them, they hit Inclusion, which is like the Crystron, they hit Ryzul, they hit Malice. If you're gonna hit Vanquishal, there isn't really like an inboard piece that you can hit. Like like if you hit Rock to 1, that may have been like a different thing. But yeah, as it stands, yeah, Rosin 1 is just like so. Like if they limited Staker Soul and limited like Rock as a Vanquisher, I'd probably be more okay with that. But yeah, like Rosin to 1, like that's like probably the most impactful hit on the outside of like Feral Imps. In terms of like how it affects decks that I view as like top tier contenders. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm very interested to hear everyone else's perspective on this because this is just like my initial thoughts. But yeah, I'll have more stuff on this over the coming weeks as we prep for Anaheim, which I'm actually going to now. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.